But if I started at one location, then I can rip down the paper. And so the same thing happens on the fault. It rips down the fault, starting at the epicenter and moving down, producing energy the whole way. Look at this. You're hearing the sound the whole time I'm ripping the paper. So let's imagine 5.3, a fault maybe 5 kilometers across. That means the Earth's producing energy for about 2 seconds. And if you were very nearby, you would feel an extremely strong motion for a few seconds because it comes off the fault and then it starts bouncing around off of things. But if you're nearby, there's not a lot of things it's run into. When Alan said that we were having basin effects, amplifying the shaking, that's the waves come into the basin, hit the walls of the basin, bounce back, hit the next wall of the basin, bounce back, and you get a reverb, basically set up within the basin. And then you get this extended duration. You know, when we've modeled what the San Andreas earthquake would look like in the LA basin, we get 50 seconds of strong shaking in downtown Los Angeles, and that's because of these basin effects. So this earthquake, much, much smaller, of course, but it was large enough to set up some of these basin effects and get things bouncing around. You know, the very distinct waves, there's the possibility that the P wave was felt here in the basin. So an earthquake produces 2 different major types of waves. The P wave moves faster, but it's smaller. The S wave is a shear wave and causes more damage, is usually quite a bit larger, but it takes longer to get to us. So sometimes you can feel the P wave and the S wave. Maybe if somebody was in a very sensitive situation, you would have one very weak one and then you feel the stronger one. I know quite clearly that I only felt the strong one and it only lasted for about 3 seconds here in Pasadena. And I was sitting quietly on the first floor of a building. So that where you're sitting, you know, if you're in a building, the building might amplify what's going on. What somebody perceives at any location is very variable depending on all sorts of situations of what soils, what rocks the waves went through, and whether you're sitting still, whether you're moving around. All of those are going to affect it by quite a bit.
All right, we've been listening to Dr. Lucy Jones, our expert seismologist. We're always fortunate when we get Dr. Jones on the air explaining exactly what we experienced. A 5.3 earthquake, not on a major fault, which is probably why.
Good news.
Yeah, it didn't do. We haven't heard about any damage so far from this earthquake. She said that there have been a number of aftershocks, which we've known about, at least 2 above 4. 4 above a 3, and when she talked about an active sequence, which this was, anything above average is 1.4, so that's why they're calling it an active sequence.
And also, we felt it here in Los Angeles. We also heard about the basin effect. Very interesting, how basically the shock waves make it into our area, bounce off the sides of the basin, and that's why maybe some of us here felt more of that rolling motion, which I definitely felt here in the studio.
And because we're in a basin, it can amplify the shaking.
Right.
Well, we're going to go up to Desmond Shaw, who has been flying overhead, of course, but he's trying to get, well, you look at our camera there, that's when it happened, how that was shaking, the Santa Monica Pier camera. But Des has been getting shots of fire helicopters, doing some surveys around the area, which always happens, right, Des, after an earthquake?
That's right. Yeah, Pat and Juan. So we're coming out of the Newhall Pass right now. We actually just came up to the Newhall Pass and up towards Castaic, about as far north as we can fly. I'll just put up the map tracker here really quick. We're getting over to the Granada Hills area, coming down off of Cessna Boulevard and Burbank. But we just kind of wanted to check some of the normal places, see if there might be any rock slides, dirt slides, anything like that along San Fernando Road, Foothill, the old road, any of those. Fortunately, we did not see any issues out there at all. The 5 freeway, obviously fine, as well as the 14. We were going to go check out Fire 3, which we just heard on Van Nuys Towers, on their way to my alma mater of CSUN, just to go check around. They're definitely on duty. 3 different fire helicopters scouring Los Angeles, really just out of an abundance of caution, I would say, at this point. No reports of any damage. I would suspect that they're going to check out the Oviatt Library at CSUN. That has these really huge pillars that you might be susceptible to earthquake damage. Of course, it was built just after the Somar earthquake, and survived the Northridge earthquake, so highly doubt there's going to be any issue there, but I'm sure just out of an abundance of caution, that's what they are going to be looking at. Let me see if this is one of the fire helicopters right here, and indeed, this is one of them. So I think they just did an orbit around Northridge, and they may be coming back in for landing, but there was another helicopter over Hollywood as well as LAX, so they're definitely out there on patrol, just making sure that everything is okay here in the greater LA area. Pat and Juan.
Yeah, they check on railroad tracks and Metrolink lines and that sort of thing, right, Des?
Yeah, I mean anything where areas could be susceptible to damage. I know they were, as we're getting up over CSUN right now, and I'll show you the Oviatt Library here in just a moment. Here it is right here. Here are those columns that I was telling you about here, pretty high up in the air. So I'm sure they just wanted to come and kind of do a cursory search around this area. We heard them over by Olive View Medical Center, which is actually very close to where the epicenter of the Sylmar earthquake was, and that's actually how that hospital came to be. But I'm sure they were up against the mountains, again, just making sure there weren't any landslides, anything crazy like that, and we haven't heard of any damage whatsoever in the greater LA area. But they were just over here in Northridge, going to be scouring wherever to see if there could have been any effects from this earthquake, guys.
All right, we appreciate your observations for us, Desmond, and just a reminder to folks, and Des, we can stay on your shot, and you can chime in if you'd like. You know, we have been there have been earthquakes even larger than a 5.3, not much larger, but if I recall, maybe a 5.7, and depending on where you are, even in the newsroom, you may not feel it. I say that because of personal experience, being at my desk and hearing the assignment desk saying, "Oh, did you feel that?" And I didn't. So I guess it just depends on where you are in a lot of these
it's also hard in here too, because you guys are on an elevated platform, I'm on an elevated platform, and sometimes different things happen in here that you think it's an earthquake. So the go-to for me is I always look up at the lights
to see if they're shaking.
To see if they're shaking. We actually have a light over here above one of our monitors that's got a bit of a filter on it, and I could see that starting to shake around. And then I looked back at the monitor and saw the Santa Monica camera. But yeah, sometimes it is a little bit difficult in here to feel them just because of the way the building's built.
And that's what happens too, right? If you're in a car, if you're moving around, as Dr. Jones was saying, you may not feel the earthquake at all, but the time of day that this happened, it's in the evening, it was past 9 o'clock, a lot of people are home, they're still, and that's when you're gonna see maybe some lights shaking or maybe your pets react to some of the shaking as well.
You know, I had asked Mike about an earthquake that happened not long ago. He was talking about Barstow. I remember earlier this year, because I called in, it's the first time I have ever felt an earthquake in my car. It was rolling. I was parked in someone's driveway, and all of a sudden it just started. I'm thinking, well, what's wrong with this car? What's happening underneath? You know, I've got to take it to the shop. And it was actually an earthquake. So that's very interesting. That had never happened to me before. Never experienced something like that. But again, depending on where you are at the moment, and we've just learned that, okay, we've just shown it on our graphic. It's been downgraded now to a 5.2. Still a moderate earthquake, right? No matter how you
definitely. Go. And you know, Pat, I think I'm going to take it back. You're mentioning feeling an earthquake while you were parked in a car. Something similar happened to me. I was in like the East Hollywood, Silver Lake area many years ago, and I felt like someone had tapped my back bumper. And I told somebody that's weird. It felt like somebody had tapped the back of my car and then said, well, we just had an earthquake. So I guess you can feel it even if you're in your car.
Yeah, and something, you know, strong elsewhere. Just even to make the car move like that, I was a bit surprised. Of course, Northridge, that's something quite different. I've never experienced an earthquake like that since, and certainly hope that we don't.
Right.
When you've got a lot of, that was centered in Northridge, and you know, all the buildings and apartments and homes, universities that were damaged, and the 10 freeway, the 118. That was the biggest one that we've that we've really all experienced. That 7.3, guys? That was in
Ridgecrest. Yeah, that was, I think, the first one, because it was July 4th and then July 5th, if I remember correctly.
July.
And I think
you were on the air. Juan was on the air.
Yeah. And I think the first one was a 6 something, and then I think the next day it was a 7, and that was crazy because that was I mean, that was even further than this one was, and it was felt. I was working with my coworker Esteban, and we, I think you guys did too. We got under the desk even here in the studio, and that's even how far away it was. And then the second day when it happened again, we had our crew up there already covering it. We immediately lost cell phone service with them. We couldn't get a hold of anybody up there, and not because anything was necessarily damaged, but the first thing everybody does when there's a quake is run to their phone and try to call somebody and say, hey, did you feel that? That ties up all the lines, and it was a whole thing. We ended up having, I think we used a satellite phone that day to be able to kind of keep in contact with them, but there was significant structure damage up there from that one.
Correct. In the
Ridgecrest area.
In Ridgecrest, and obviously not an urban area, so you didn't have as many people, you didn't have as many buildings and structures, but they certainly received damage, but we didn't hear as a result of that. And so far, so good, guys, in terms of what's happened near Bakersfield.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, it is still shaking up there. The map is continuously updating. I think, at last count, I think we're up to 24 aftershocks. And these are not small. I mean, we're talking a 3.0, a 3.5, everything in the 2. Let me just see what the smallest aftershock has been. It looks like the smallest aftershock has been a 2.5, which is still, I mean, certainly not damaging shaking, but that is still enough to feel when you're up there. And I remember, I mean, when we were doing Ridgecrest stuff, there were people that didn't want to go back inside their homes because the ground wouldn't stop shaking. So, it's probably not that situation up there, but 2.5 is definitely still enough to feel if you're right in the area, and 24 aftershocks is a lot.
And when was the exact time that this hit? I don't know.
9:09.
Yeah.
9:09. And what did Dr. Jones just say? That within a quarter of all foreshocks happened within the hour.
Right.
So.
Right.
We're closer to the hour now, guys, and that's good so far.
And the nice thing is, she said it reduces with time, and by day 3,
Significantly, yeah.
we're kind of out of danger. The risk is gone. So only time will tell. But my gosh, 20 plus aftershocks from this earthquake from just less than an hour ago.
But you know what? We feel thousands, though. Thousands
Little
happen
ones too,
every day.
Yeah.
You could. I can be. I remember just maybe hearing my nightstand, like something like, what was that rattling a little bit?
Like the house settling,
But
right?
don't, you don't get up out of your bed and run and get your kid, anything like that, because you figure, well, I guess that's an aftershock. If there's no other explanation, there's an aftershock somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's pretty normal to happen. And I guess the good news too, Mike, is normally we would have people calling us talking about damage, and you haven't received any calls.
No, we have gotten a ton of viewer emails of people just kind of letting us know where they felt it, and certainly have felt it from all over the place. Our email's also full with the alerts about aftershocks and different things like that happening. So we're certainly, hearing from people that have felt it, and especially as the shaking continues. And I was looking at the USGS map, and Mike in the booth, I don't know if we can come to my computer really quick. I just want to show people how far, even to the north, it was felt. So certainly this is the LA basin here, Orange County, San Bernardino, even out in Riverside County, people have felt it. But when you look to the north here as well, I mean, we're talking about the north end of Fresno is reporting feeling it, even all the way over to the northwest, San Luis Obispo. They're also reporting feeling it. So definitely felt a pretty good swath away. And again, this is where the epicenter was. Oh, excuse me, that's Caltech ending their meeting. A 5.2 quake, though, this is where the epicenter was, right along the 5 and the 99 freeway. But each one of these boxes is a report of somebody feeling it. So you can see as we get into the more populated areas here, that's where they are feeling it most. Desmond Shaw is still up in SkyCal right now, surveying the helicopter. Des, that's Fire 4 with you right there? Fire 5.
Fire 5 to the left, and I think that's Fire 3 we can see way in the distance right over here, over towards the Hollywood Hills. We had just heard them talking on the common frequency. They were over by Children's Hospital, and I know, the other chopper that just we saw over Northridge was also over All of You Medical Center. So I'm sure, they're just going to check out all of the hospitals around the LA area, looking for, anything that could be conceived as any kind of crack or damage or anything that might warrant their attention. But again, this is, I think, really just kind of standard protocol probably for every earthquake that's above a certain magnitude, regardless of how far away it was. I'm sure that they just have protocols where they're going to get out and launch and just get the spotlight on and make sure that everything is okay. And so far that is the case. They have their bright spotlights out there. So Fire 5 has pretty much gone completely circled the valley from Silmar now all the way down to West Hills, and now at the 101 405. Looks like they might be making a southbound turn right now. We know of at least 3 fire helicopters up around the LA scouring all over the city, guys.
Yeah, and Desmond, I'm looking at Kern County fire. Obviously, the earthquake happened in their jurisdiction, so they are saying that they, have the same procedures essentially, where they'll pull all of the apparatus out of the bay. They'll conduct what they call windshield surveys of their districts, where they'll kind of just drive through. And again, I just continue to check, and I don't see any reports of damage. I don't see any, anything significant. Certainly enough for a lot of people to feel it. We've seen some pictures and videos on social media of things swaying, lamps swaying. I mean, certainly that was here. I could only imagine it probably felt a little bit stronger over there in Bakersfield as well. So, that's hopefully the extent of it. I'm sure we'll, see kind of our obligatory liquor store that has had some bottles rattle around, or, maybe even some things fall off. But again, where that quake was, I just want to come back to my computer in the control room if we're able to do that, and show you exactly where this happened, right off the 5 and the 99, just west of the 5 freeway. And again, all of these are where the 5.2, now 2, they've downgraded it, 5.2, I'll have to update my map here, but this is where that happened, just west of the 5 freeway. And you can see this is really heavily all farmland. I mean, I think if we get in right here, there looks like maybe a power supply or something like that, but not a very populated area where it happened, but this is up here in Bakersfield. And Des, I know as you're kind of trailing Fire 5 there, we've also got Fire 4 and a couple of the other ones doing some stuff as well. Looks like Fire 4 may have gone around the Marina Del Rey area and that kind of place. Are they talking at all on comms, or are they, I'm sure, not seeing anything? It doesn't appear that there was any kind of significant damage here, right?
No, we just heard them talking on the tower, just letting them know that they were going to be in and out of Van Nuys and Burbank airspace, as they were just on earthquake duty, as they said. They're probably going to be checking out a lot of freeway interchanges as well, since so many of them are these towering columns that go all over the place. Obviously, everything built up to very strong earthquake code, and almost certainly not going to be affected by a 5 magnitude or 5.2 magnitude earthquake that far away, especially when it was that deep. But again, just all kind of the obligatory checks just to make sure that everything is okay. But it would make sense that you had one at the 405 and the 90. You have a lot of bridges and connectors there, the 405 and the 10, the 101 and the 405. And here they are coming over the Hollywood Hills.
Yeah, all right, Desmond Shaw, SkyCal, thank you. Susie Suh, Chauncey Glover here now joining us for KCAL News at 10 as we continue to talk about the earthquake.
All right, thank you, Mike, so much. Breaking news here at 10. And we bring you this breaking news at 10 tonight, a 5.2 earthquake near Bakersfield. The shaking felt across Southern California. Now, this was the view, as you can see the camera shaking, from Santa Monica. I'm Susie Suh. You're watching KCAL News at 10.
And I'm Chauncey Glover, and here's a look from our seismograph right here. Look at that. This hit at about 9:10, and we know that it was a 5.3 magnitude earthquake striking near Bakersfield, and it shook all the way here to LA County.
A lot of people feeling the shaking, as we were talking about. Let's go upstairs to Desmond Shaw live in SkyCal with a look. Desmond, what do you have?
Yes, Susie and Chauncey, I believe this is Fire 3 now. We were following Fire 5 earlier as they were scouring. Mike, let me know this is actually Fire 5. So they circled pretty much the entire San Fernando Valley. They took off, I believe, out of Van Nuys Airport. They headed east over towards kind of the northeast corner of the valley, the Somar area over by Olive View Medical Center, probably looking up along the hillsides there, the steep hillside, just making sure there weren't any landslides or anything like that. We didn't hear about them finding anything of that nature. They went over, did a big loop around CSUN, looking at some of the structures there, then down to the 101 freeway and the 405. There were other choppers over around Children's Hospital Medical Center, down around LAX. So checking out a lot of just very important locations. Just want to just kind of double checking, making sure that everything is in pretty good shape and that they didn't suffer any damage. Went up and did a flight of our own up into the Newhall Pass, up along San Fernando Road, around the 5 and the 14, see if we saw anything unusual, any dirt in the roadway, landslides, rock slides, anything like that, all the way up to Castaic. Didn't see any issues, didn't see CHP having to block any lanes for anything, so everything looks to be just fine so far from what we've seen across the LA area now as Fire 5 is making their way over to the Burbank area and northbound on the 5. They've had their spotlights on and off. No reports of any damage yet at this point. I believe now we're going to go to Evelyn Taft, so I will toss it over to her now, guys.
All right, we'll get with Evelyn in just 1 second, but first, we spoke with seismologist Dr. Lucy Jones tonight to learn more about the aftershocks and the possibility this will lead to a larger event. But first, we want to get to Mike Rogers at the desk for an update on more of this earthquake.
Yeah, you know, Susie and Chauncey, Dr. Lucy Jones did have a lot of valuable information, as she always does. One of the things that she talked about is how active of an aftershock period we are having with these, and not something that is necessarily unusual. She says it all depends on the topography, but I want to come to my computer here because I'm going to show you kind of that whole deal and how it works out and where exactly the earthquake was here. So we're here in the LA area. Obviously, this is the San Fernando Valley. All of these contingents of orange dots, these are all of the earthquakes that have happened. 5.2 was the primary one. You can see it's right here. And again, I want to show you the topography. It's all a lot of farmland out here, which is a lot of what Kern County is. But look at all of the different aftershocks that have happened right in here. All of these orange dots are aftershocks. At last count, we were up to 25, maybe even higher of aftershocks there that had happened. And again, all of these aftershocks are not small aftershocks. The smallest one I was able to find so far is about a 2.5, which for people that are living in that area certainly are going to feel a 2.5. I also want to come here because I want to show you the Did You Feel It map. This is what the USGS puts out here. All of these blue dots are people that felt it all the way down here into Riverside County, deep Riverside County, to Temecula, Murrieta, even into almost part of Camp Pendleton there. But what was also interesting to me is further to the north here, where you have up into the north end of Fresno, Clovis, all that area, also reporting feeling it. So this was something that a lot of people felt. We talked to people even over here in San Luis Obispo, they're feeling it as well. We talked to a lot of people who kind of described this, especially over in the Bakersfield area. We talked to somebody who basically said, I basically saw it more than I felt it. A lot of shaking of the lights. Here in the studio, because we're so far away, as Dr. Jones was describing, we felt not the primary wave, but the secondary wave, which made it feel for us here a little bit more of a kind of a rolling motion. It wasn't actually until I looked up at one of our lights here in the studio, saw it shaking, that we realized there was an earthquake. And the things here in the studio, the lights, the TVs that are above us, they shook for quite a while. Even as we got on the air and we're talking about it, you could still see the TVs kind of shaking back and forth. So different feelings for everybody. What was also interesting in this one, especially in the greater Los Angeles area, lots of people got the shake alert from the Shake Alert app, which is supposed to go off after the quake is believed to be a certain magnitude or higher. It triggers that warning to your phones. Now, I didn't get it here in the studio, but we've heard from a ton of people who were able to get it, and they got it before the actual quake. One of our executive producers saying he got the alert about 10 seconds before the shaking started, which, you know, in this situation, thankfully there was no damage, no serious injuries, but the design of this is for that 10 seconds to be able to save your life, for you to be able to get to a place where you may be a little bit more safer. So it's good to know that that did work tonight, guys.
All right, Mike, thank you so much. And as we were talking about, we spoke with seismologist Dr. Lucy Jones tonight to learn more about the aftershocks and the possibility this will lead to a larger event.
The location is at the southern end of the Central Valley. So it's very near where we had a magnitude 7.5 in 1952. However, it does not appear to be on the same fault as that earthquake. That was the White Wolf Fault, which dips in a different direction. And it doesn't look like this earthquake was associated with any known fault, is our preliminary assessment. It is having a lot of aftershocks. We've already had 2 above magnitude 4 and 4 above magnitude 3, between magnitude 3 and 4. So that's a pretty active sequence for this very short amount of time since the event. I'll answer Mike Rogers' question from KCAL. Heard people say that they saw things shake more than they felt it. Can you explain what that might be? That would be because most of us felt it from pretty far away. I felt it here in Pasadena, but it was a very mild shaking because I'm so far away from it. And so there's a variety of ways in which you'll experience the shaking, but especially if you're sitting quietly, relatively far away, you'll see things move maybe more than you'll be feeling it. Also, in terms of the chances that this is a foreshock, we have the same answer for every earthquake. It's about 5% chance, or 1 in 20 earthquakes in Southern California we see are followed by something larger. They turn out to be a foreshock within the next few days. We've never found anything that makes it look more likely to be a foreshock than any other earthquake. So every time we end up saying the same thing. A reminder too that the risk of it being a foreshock drops rapidly with time. 1/4 of all foreshocks are within an hour of their main shock. By the time we get to 3 days out, it's going to be essentially the risk will be all gone. In terms of whether it's unusual to have an active aftershock sequence, it's a normal distribution. We can talk about what the average number is, which would be 1 magnitude 4, right? And we've already had 2, so we're above the average. But the range is extremely large. We see variability of more than a factor of 1,000 for the same size earthquake. I mean, we've seen magnitude 5s with essentially no aftershocks, and we've seen them with thousands and thousands of aftershocks, and it's a distribution. We also haven't seen any particular correlation between that and the chance of it being a foreshock. Just to say that when you have a lot of aftershocks, you tend to have a lot of aftershocks, and you could have a larger one.
And once again, that was seismologist Dr. Lucy Jones explaining more in depth as to what happened here tonight with that earthquake. Now, we also spoke to one of the content managers at the CBS station there in Bakersfield. He said he got a warning about the quake and was prepared for a big one.
I had the warning from the My Shake app just seconds before I felt the shaking, and it notified me that the 6.0 earthquake was coming. And I was getting ready for that shaker, but a couple seconds later, we saw the lights moving and our blinds moving just a little bit, but wasn't as strong as I was expecting it to be.
All right, Evelyn Taft standing by now with more on this earthquake. Evelyn.
Yeah, and of course, if it was a 6.0 magnitude quake, it would be exponentially larger than a 5.0. And that means 10 times larger than a 5.0. So we will take it. We will take a 5.3. And right now we're tracking the aftershocks, Susie and Chauncey, and we were counting out about 28. I'm looking at the long line right here, and it's too many to even count, and they keep coming. So we're over 24 at this point, possibly a little more. I'm going to hone in on the area where we saw the initial shaking in Mettler, and now around Mettler, again, more than 24 aftershocks at the moment. And this was a 5.3 on what we now call the moment magnitude scale. We've known it as the Richter scale over so many years, but it's largely sort of replaced the older Richter scale as it provides a more accurate and consistent measurement of an earthquake size, particularly for large, distant, or deep earthquakes. Again, this one not as deep and not really associated with a big fault line. Dr. Lucy Jones was telling us that earlier. It is a 5.3 quake, which is considered a moderate earthquake. So that means it could cause damage to buildings. We'll show you a graphic coming up right here just to kind of give you a little more perspective, but it could cause damage to buildings and infrastructure, especially if they're not well constructed. But typically it doesn't result in widespread destruction. So let's take a look at these aftershocks. So the last time we looked at this map, we maybe had about 3, 4, 5, 6 at the most aftershocks. They just keep going and going. Every red dot represents what we've seen shaking-wise in the last hour. So just to give you an idea, again, if we put all these numbers on the map, they wouldn't even fit, but we started at 5.3, 5.2, then 4.1, 3.5, 2.5, 3.3. So we did see now we're counting 3, 4.0 and above aftershocks, and then they go down to 3 and 2, and that's where we're at right now. So we're considering really in the 2.7 range, just a little lower for us. So I just want to show you what that means as far as earthquake magnitude goes. So right now we're feeling 2 to 3, which is usually not felt, or maybe felt a little bit minor, no damage. So that's what we're working with as far as these aftershocks. We get about 100,000 earthquakes like this per year, not aftershocks, but earthquakes. Just to give you an idea, happens on a regular basis. Then we go up to a 4, which is considered light, and that's where we see noticeable shaking. We get about 10,000 per year as far as noticeable shaking goes in a light category. 5.0, that's considered moderate. We get some property damage. We get about 1,500 of these a year. This is where this earthquake in Mettler is landing. And the energy equivalent, 1 million pounds of explosive. Remember, this is all exponential. So to get to 6.0 or 6.3, right, that's 10 times more than what we experienced tonight. So similar to what we saw in the Northridge quake, or quake that I experienced in 1989, which was the Loma Prieta quake up in Northern California. But of course, a lot of us familiar with the Northridge quake, which was a 6.9, which is almost a 7, which would be considered almost a major, between strong and major. So tonight, just a moderate, but still we are assessing the damage, and I'm going to send it back to you guys for the details on that.
All right. Evelyn, thank you.
All right, now we want to go out to Laura Perez. She is live tonight in Studio City talking to folks who felt the shakes when the earthquake hit. Laura?
Yeah, well, actually, it's been a little bit difficult to find people who felt the quake. I understand that you all there at the studio did feel it quite strongly. However, we're just a couple blocks away. We talked to more than a dozen people who were visiting the store, who work here at the store. They did not feel it, which I think just goes to show that it really depends on where exactly you are and what exactly you're doing, if depending on whether or not you actually feel it. We were up in Simi Valley. My photographer and I were up in Simi Valley when we got the alert, and it said to brace for an earthquake, which we did, and then we didn't feel anything. So we have been seeing on social media people in Castaic and Saugus and Palmdale all reporting that they felt it, but very hit and miss where we are. We did just speak with a young man who is on his motorcycle, and he did feel the shakes.
I was driving, it was just shaking. It felt like I was gonna fall off my bike, actually.
Have you been through an earthquake before?
Not on my bike, but yeah, I have.
Okay. And was it a little startling, or what do you think?
It just felt weird. I felt like I said, I felt like I was gonna fall off.
Did you immediately know what was happening?
No, I did not. I didn't know. I didn't know what. Yeah, I thought it was something wrong with my bike. But
and then when did you realize?
Somebody told me afterwards that it was an earthquake.
Yeah, that's right. He said he thought it was maybe a problem with his bike, some sort of problem with the road. And he said it did last more than a few seconds. And then when he heard from his buddy that it was an earthquake, then he figured it all out. But again, that just shows you, we were bracing for it up in Simi Valley, and we did not feel anything. He was on his bike. He wasn't quite sure what it was. It really does depend on what you're doing when it hits. Guys, back to you.
All right, Laurie, thank you so much. No, it's different feeling that while riding a bike.
Sure, I imagine. My goodness, on two wheels, it must be so different. All right, Laurie, thank you. Let's go back upstairs now to Desmond Shaw, live in SkyCal. He is checking things out from the air just to make sure everything is okay. So far, no reports of damage or injuries, right, Desmond?
That's right, Susie and Chauncey. We're over the Crescenta Valley right here. You see Foothill Boulevard and the 210 freeway in the center of the shot. And no reports of any damage. In fact, it sounds like LA City Fire, their helicopters are going to be wrapping up their earthquake survey duties. We were following Fire 5, who came over here to the Crescenta Valley as I put up the satellite. So he went up into the mountains right here and then actually turned his lights off, which was a little startling, but that was because he was putting on his night vision goggles. So they were going back in the mountains and said that they were headed up to go check out Pacoima Dam to make sure that that was okay. There's also a dam that is up Big Tahunga Road that they were going to check, and so they had to use their night vision goggles to be able to do that. But we saw them over around CSUN, Olive Medical Center in Sylmar. They were checking out the hillsides here over to the left in the Latuna Canyon area, looking for any rock slides, anything like that. Didn't see any kind of issues, so it sounds like the fire choppers will be returning to base, just kind of their standard protocol anytime there is a earthquake of a certain magnitude, just getting out, making sure everything is okay in Los Angeles, and all appears to be well. Chauncey and Susie.
Right. Desmond, thank you so much.
We want to go back to the desk now, and Mike Rogers, I understand you have some video of a meeting during this quaker when it hit.
Yeah, so, Susie and Chauncey, it's not uncommon for us here at the desk to roll on city council meetings, roll on important meetings that happen, and one of them was the meeting down in Ranchos Palos Verdes where they're talking about the landslide that is happening down there. I want to show you my computer first, though, because I want to show you the Did You Feel It area, and you can see that Ranchos Palos Verdes here is one of those places where it was felt all the way down into Huntington Beach. Jose in our TOC Center, our Technical Operations Center, was just telling me that there was a different meeting that we were rolling on down in Huntington Beach where they also felt it. So definitely people are feeling it. Now, what was interesting, though, and again, I think as technology advances, we were talking more and more about the advancement of these early warnings, and the meeting, and we'll show you here that the video is going over right now, but the meeting that we were listening to down in Ranchos Palos Verdes, they actually found out about it from the app first, and then you can kind of see them all sit there and then essentially kind of just wait for them to feel it. And I think we do have that tape now. If we're able to take a look at that. So, okay, not yet. We're still working on that. But, these meetings that are happening, you're seeing them. That's the beauty of live streaming, you guys. So we're going to continue to work on that tape. Meanwhile, I'll go back over to the USGS map, and I'll show you just kind of the series of aftershocks, and look at all of those. So these orange ones, as they turn orange, those are the ones that are getting a little bit older. The red ones are the ones that are newer here. So but just a ton of aftershocks. So look over on the side, which again, the smallest one that I'm seeing here is about a 2.5. So, but lots of aftershocks that definitely would be felt. A 3.5, a 3.0, a 3.8. That's a pretty good, decent one. A 4.1, a 4.5. So definitely aftershocks that are shaking people. And again, this is Bakersfield area here along the 5 and the 99. So, excuse me. We're going to go to that tape now, and I want you to take a listen. And again, this is when they're sitting there talking about the landslide in Ranchos Palos Verdes.
It's a 5.7 degree. I think we should take cover. It's in Kern County, so that's not. It's in China.
Yeah, and you can hear them say, you know, you should take cover. The beginning of the tape there a little bit, you hear the actual Shake Alert app, which we can't, you know, have you listen to for, you know, obviously public safety concerns, and we don't want people to think that there is another earthquake coming. But you hear that, they actually kind of joke about it because somebody says, oh, come on, it's in Kern County. But then they're sitting there and they do kind of feel it. And that is the alert that a lot of people got on their phones tonight, you guys.
All right, Mike, thank you so much.
And be sure to stay with KCAL News for continuing coverage of the earthquake near Bakersfield tonight of 5.2.
Well, developing news tonight, homicide detectives are on the scene of a mysterious death outside a 7-Eleven in West Hollywood. LA County sheriffs tell us 2 cars here collided at the gas station on Santa Monica Boulevard in Fairfax. Then something else happened afterwards that put one person in the hospital and left another person dead. Now, we reached out to the sheriff's department tonight to learn more about what happened here. We're still waiting to hear back.
Now to Long Beach. Smoking cannabis at public events is a common but illegal practice the city might actually be changing. A 5-year-old ordinance allowing retailers to sell and people to consume cannabis at event spaces is being considered tonight. KCAL News reporter Leslie Marin in Long Beach with what the council decided.
Music, food, drinks, and soon maybe